In this second episode of a three-part series, I'm going to show you the steps I took to make a set of stairs and some embellishments for a tabletop structure that came from a video game structure. Welcome to another episode of Game Terrain Engineering. As I mentioned in the previous episode, the idea for this project came from a structure that I found on the internet, a screenshot that I believe came from a video game. The pixelation of the image makes me think that it looks like a screenshot. But I liked the structure and I thought, hey, I'd like to have that on my desktop. I went to Tinkercad and I created a 3D model of it, and you can see that in the previous episode. And from that 3D model, I was able to get the measurements and, make it look like what I wanted before I actually did any cutting of foam. I've converted it to a 3D model. I've created the base, and in this episode, you're going to see me cut out these stairs. There's 4 sets of stairs that go around the base. This is the base. So there's going to be 4 staircases that lead up to this. And then on the top 4 corners are some small embellishments, and I'll cover those as well. By the end of this video, I will have all of the parts cut and most of them gridded and textured. And then in the third and final part of this project, I will paint everything and assemble it and see how it turned out. So let's get started. We'll start by first cutting the staircases. So to make the stairs, and I need 4 sets of stairs, it's basically going to be 7 layers of 1/4 inch foam, and there's a 1 inch step on each one. So if the first step is going to be 1 inch, second one's 2 inches, 3 inches, I'm going to need a length of 28 inches in total. The staircase is going to be 4 inches wide. Now I can't fit this in the camera. I have a large 2 foot by 4 foot piece of pink foam here. See that? So I'm going to cut out a length of 28 inch by 4 inch wide strip on this. Actually, I'm going to need 4 of these. I now have 4 28 inch runs of 1/4 inch foam. These need to be cut into the lengths 7 inches, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and that will make my staircase, 4 of them. So here's the top base. At the 4 corners are going to be these 1 inch square embellishments. They're going to sort of look like altars, just ornamental. They're going to go in the 4 corners, and they're going to be a top and a bottom that's going to sandwich a middle section. The top and the bottom, I'm going to need 8 of these for a total of 4 sets. They're going to be 1 inch by 1 inch with a 1/2 inch notch cut out, and they're only a 1/4 inch tall. Sandwiched between those 2 is going to be another block that's 3/4 by 3/4 with a 1/2 inch also cut out. They're 1/4 inch wide. These are going to be a 1/2 inch tall. So all in all, we're talking about a 1 inch tall corner embellishment for the 4. So what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to switch over to time lapse. I'm going to cut those 8 1 inch by 1 inch pieces out of this leftover, and then cut the 1/2 inch out. Okay, so now I have the 8 pieces that will make up the top and the bottom. And again, they're 1 inch by 1 inch with a 1/2 inch notch cut out. And now I'm going to need to cut 4 of the centerpieces out of 1/2 inch foam. And they're going to be 3/4 by 3/4. And I have a piece of 1/2 inch foam just for that. Right here. So this is just scrap. Doesn't have to look pretty. I need to cut 4 squares, 3/4 by 3/4. So I'm going to go to time lapse. You'll see me cut those out, and then also cut the 1/2 inch notch out. I think I'm going to have to come up with a different method for this centerpiece. The base and the top, they're fine. They just did fine. But as I'm cutting these smaller pieces, and remember these are only 3/4 of an inch on a side, I'm getting tear out in the center. And obviously I have very little area to saw. I did change my blade, so it's sharp, but I'm getting tear out in the center. So I think what I'm going to have to do is cut these in 2 pieces. There'll be a longer piece and then a shorter piece, and I'll have to glue those together so that I don't get this damage inside. I have 4 sets of stairs, and they're not glued together. I'm going to be painting these individually. I don't want to paint the whole thing, because most of this 7-inch length is going to be covered up, and then the 6-inch I only need to cover this much. So I'm going to paint these individually before I glue them together. And the reason being is when I glue stuff together like this, and I do the sponge painting for the stone texture, it's very hard to get down in this corner edge here where the step meets the top part, the riser, I guess is what they call it. So until I get better at it, or until I find a better way to do it, I'm just going to paint the first 1.5 inches of each one of these individually so that when they're glued together, there's no interruption. I'll also be painting the front of them. Now, before I do painting or assembly, I also need to grid these. I need to grid the step and the riser part, but I don't want to, this is 4 inches wide. So I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 grids, but I don't want to do this one 4 because the lines will line up and it won't look right. So I'm going to offset every other step by 1/2 inch. So there will be, this one will have a 1/2 inch, then an inch, then an inch, then a 1/2 inch. Does that make sense? And then 1 inch, 4 inches across, and then a break here. And then what I'll do is after I've gridded those, I'll continue the line to the front riser here. I'm not going to have to do the sides, and here's why. Once these things are glued together, I am actually going to take a piece of 1/2 inch foam. I'm using quarter just as an example now, but I'm going to get a piece of 1/2 inch foam, and I'm going to lay this down on it, and I'm going to trace the steps, and then I'm going to cut it out. That's going to be glued to the side to cover these, to cover the separation of the 1/4 inch things. It's also so that I can apply some texture to the larger, thicker piece. And then I haven't decided if I'm going to do it yet, but once that 1/2 inch piece is on the side here, I might do some sort of embellishment, like a rail going down, a flat piece on each side. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, but right now it's time to grid all 4 sets of stairs. So let's go to the time lapse. I have 4 staircases completed. They are gridded and the lines are continued out on the riser here so that when these are all glued together, there's a staggering of the 1 inch grid lines and also a staggering from the front view, if you can see that. I'll move this around a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the old tinfoil here and I'm just going to, give it the rough stone edge on the exposed parts, and I'll do that to everything here. All right, 4 staircases with the stone texture applied to just the exposed area here. Now, after doing this, I realized that there's a lot of the stones have this nice sharp corner where I cut, so I'm going to need to dull these edges. And I can do that with the aluminum just by running it along the edge. I don't think you're going to be able to see this in the camera, but it dulls the edge a little bit. There we go. And that's it. I now have 4 base pieces that will be stacked to make a 2-inch high structure. I have 4 set of staircases that have been textured with a stone texture, and they've also been gridded, not glued together yet. They're separate. I have 8 of these small 1-inch square pieces. These will sandwich one of these smaller L-shaped pieces in the center, like that. Can you see that? There'll be 4 of these on the corners. So now that all the cutting, texturing, and gridding is done, it's time to start painting, gluing, and putting this thing together. So I'll see you in the next episode for that.